The organization has been opened up to all sorts of people, like health workers and non-doctors. Basically, some of the doctors feel pushed. They don't feel like they're as much a part of it, particularly in where the organization was older. But the thing is coming off. We have a lot of pre-registrations for the convention. The convention is coming off, and there's 17 different subject areas and everything else, and so it's going to work.
What kind of
just
shape?
At a lower level.
What kind of shape is the membership in? Is it larger than it used to be, or is it shrunk?
What figure did we give officially last time?
I don't know.
It's hard to say. We don't know. We just don't have that kind of. We don't know. We just don't know because this project's going on. I'm the only one of the national staff people that travels because just to do this occupational health project, we have meetings at different places. Like we showed up in Oklahoma City, there was all sorts of stuff going. A suit on the Hill-Burton Act. They were the beginning of free clinic. They were going to do a dental clinic there. Like no one knew this in the national organization. People, you see what I mean? And we don't really know what's going on. And it'll be interesting to see what happens at this convention next week.
So there's a parallel between the Nixon administration and MCHR in that it's going back to the states and localities. Is that it?
You could say that, yeah.
Okay, well, let's talk about occupational health then. Last year there were questions such as the atomic energy testing and things going on in Colorado that were hazardous, and they mentioned that hospitals were not equipped to deal with radiation poisoning and so forth. And black lung disease was a major issue, and they were saying that hospitals were not anxious to give the proper kinds of tests to determine the presence of black lung disease. So maybe you could tell me what kinds of things have happened since 14 months ago in these areas or any other areas.
Let's say in the case of the black lung situation, there was a problem about the definition of black lung, and under the coal mine Health and Safety Act of 1969, black lung was something you had to see on an X-ray. It didn't have anything, and I think one kind of breath test, and it didn't have anything, and it was a rather restrictive definition for black lung. And so about half the people that thought they had black lung were turned down for Social Security benefits. And what's happened is a bill sponsored by Senator Taft called the coal mine, the black lung. I think it was the Black Lung Benefits Act. It was passed last summer, and making it easier for people to prove that they had black lung. And there's a lot more people getting compensation now than got it before.
What do you think the role of MCHR was in getting that?
Oh, zero. We had some people that were working with some of the black lung people, but that was mostly local. A whole series of activists. I'm just telling you, I know what I read about it, but we weren't directly involved in the black lung struggle at all.
Okay, well, what kinds of things was MCHR instrumental in achieving through its, occupational therapy committee or occupational health and safety?
Well, what we've done is we've turned on a lot of workers and med students to the issues, and we set up a committee like this Chicago Area Committee for Occupational Safety and Health. We set up one in Pittsburgh, which is functioning. We're starting one in St. Louis. We'd like to do a number in L.A. And we have people who are tied up with MCHR doing this kind of work in New York and New Haven, and we have good relations with other organizations. They're doing stuff like this, such as urban planning aid, but it's a very small group of people. It's not very many people. With the Native people in Washington, Health Research Group, Sid Wolf, but there's not very many troops, and not very many people who do it. No one's making any money off it, and everybody's terribly overworked. People just can't keep up with all the things they have to do because we're to the left of the money, and the big union support for the area really hasn't come down, in my opinion. This is what Assistant Secretary Ginther said.
Yeah.
There's no real union. The only union that's really interested is in the oil, chemical, and atomic workers. And, of course, they're having this shell strike on this issue. Mm-hmm. And one reason they're able to have a shell strike is because the level of consciousness has been raised in the workers through the activity of people like us. And, for one reason that Tony Ozaki has supported the Chicago Project, and one reason we did a course for them last December where we had about 25 people coming every week for 6 weeks at night, after work on Monday nights, was because he felt that MCHR, was an organization that had mobilized enough medical people who are interested in the issue, so there would be some follow-up. And there's, we've discovered things like we discovered one feed plant, for instance, that came up during the course, which Tony's checking into, for instance, where they use diethylstilbest, where they put where workers were exposed to diethylstilbestrol in the feed, and they were developing breasts. Male workers were developing breasts because they were breeding this stuff, and this is something that's been banned by the FDA from being used in cattle feed now. But it's things like this that have come out of the project. We did some work on we were investigating a company doctor out at the harvesting plant, for instance, and we had medical students and doctors examine people and take evidence on workman's comp cases, and accident cases where people have been pretty much mangled in the plant and gotten very little satisfaction from the company doctor in terms of medical care.
Have health workers had any static from their employers about their involvement in this kind of activity? In other words,
in hospitals?
Hospitals or any other health employer. No,
not. Yes, they have had static, but we only work with as a union. People, will only work for this if they have a union that's going to protect them. And of course, we've heard of cases where people have been fired for raising these kinds of issues, and when the union doesn't protect them, they're in trouble. We've pretty much ignored the non-union scene because we just can't deal with it.
One of the questions that was raised last year too was that health workers are often denied treatment in their own health environment. And here they are in a hospital and they cut their finger and they can't get it cared for without paying at the emergency room or something like that. And I wonder if you've dealt with that kind of issue at all.
We haven't dealt with it that much. No, we haven't since then. And there's the things we should deal with. A lot of things we should have dealt with. We haven't dealt with that much. But this is still the case, pretty much. And we haven't done very much. There's a whole series of things we should be doing more stuff with. Hospital work, hazards of hospital work. So, there's a lot of stuff coming out about the hazards of, for instance, pregnant operating room nurses and higher abortion rates and things like that, and spontaneous abortion rates, and just a whole series of problems that we just haven't dealt with because, as I said, we just it's like one half-time person. We're turning stuff out. We've written up, for instance, a lot of manuals on how to do a project. We've done stuff on how to relate to union locals. We've done stuff on suggested collective bargaining demands. We've done critiques. I just did a critique of the Respiratory Disease Benefits Act, and we serve as a resource center for people that want to get work-oriented literature. And we've probably gotten about 250 requests for literature through the mail, and stuff trickles in every week, and we fill those orders and send them out. And
so you're primarily in the business of generating information.
Yeah, we can't do a service thing. We don't have any troops. There's no way. No one's going to give us money no one has. We've written big, beautiful grants to different foundations. We spent a lot of time trying to get foundation money, and we didn't get anything. And we have very good relations with the people doing the. We're just not for the occupational health project. We just haven't gotten that kind of money. Now we sort of resigned to the fact that we're not going to get it, and but we'll keep the thing going somehow. And I'm finishing up a PhD, and I'm going to work here half time.
What is your background?
I'm getting a PhD in political science, and I'm writing a thing called The Politics of Occupational Death and Disability. And I know something about it actually, but the insurance, the workman's compensation insurance, industrial inspection, and the institutions and political forces that have shaped this area of policy, particularly since the beginning of the century, and so. What we're trying to do, and I think we're having some success, is as I say, all this activity is terribly understaffed, but we feel that what we want to do is, get workers and unions turned onto the issue and show that, in fact, workers inside the shops can do a hell of a lot themselves. They don't have to depend too much on technical expertise because it's never going to come. We find out that workers can do testing of the air inside their shops. They can do the whole series of things they can just handle themselves. They can write, reasonable collective bargaining demands, monitor working conditions. They can do all these things. And secondly, we want to change the medical profession. We want to try to get, make this thing an important, every medical student should do at least one course on occupational health and safety. And of course, all this is beginning to change. It shouldn't, if you do occupational health, you shouldn't be, doing occupational health shouldn't mean being a company doctor and being basically someone that takes care of the company's financial health and therefore be a very low prestige field. It should be something that where there's a certain freedom to do research and to really treat the problems people have, which they don't have under the in the social role of company doctor. And so we'd like to.
Dr. Young said last year that there would be many company doctors, but he'd never heard of a union doctor. I wonder if that's changed since that time.
Yeah, that's changed, and they're not. Well, there have been a few union doctors. Doctor, what's his name from the mine workers? Who's the guy from the mine workers? Not Bush, but they've Rasmussen.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. There are union doctors. They're not necessarily being paid by unions, but there are people like Rasmussen, Dr. Buff. There's another fellow who who's on the mine workers staff, and